Welcome to the Bernard Lee Poker Show as we are continuing our interviews with 2021 WSOP bracelet winners. As I mentioned previously, this past year had the most bracelet winners that won multiple times. We've had on a couple of these guests already, Anthony Zeno. We've had on Josh Aryeh. Well, we're going to add another one to the list. This gentleman won 2 bracelets in 2021. He won the 5K 6 max for over $560,000, and also the one drop, little one for one drop, over $396,000 over a field of almost 3,800 players. He cashed 9 times this summer and won the first time this award was given out, the WSOP No-Limit Player of the Year. Of course, Josh Aryeh won Player of the Year. This gentleman ended up 10th in that race, but did take home the crown for No Limit Hold'em Player of the Year. Welcome to the show, Scott Ball. Scott, thanks for joining us here on the Bernard Lee Poker Show.
Thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure. It's been trying to set this up for a while, and I've been just all over the place. So thanks for being patient with me.
Hey, no problem. We're glad to have you on. We're glad to talk about the run. It was a phenomenal run. You know, you have had a very interesting world in the world of poker. Didn't start out necessarily in this realm. It was more on the Twitch side of it, where you really kind of got into the world of poker. We'll talk about that in a second. But prior to this, you only had on the Hendon Mob only about 100,000 in career earnings, and then out of left field, you have this amazing run, and you win over $1 million in the WSOP, including these 2 bracelets. Was it just a surreal experience, or was this the intent or the plan the entire time going into the 2021 WSOP?
That's actually a really funny question. So I told Anthony Zeno, so I've played a lot of high stakes cash and just cash for a long time. And I kind of had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to really prove myself this year, this past World Series. And Anthony Zeno is one of my closest friends. And we actually had a conversation. I was like, look, before the World Series started, I'm going to win No Limit Player of the Year. And please just go win overall POI, because I don't think a no player can actually win overall POI. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's a thing anymore. And Anthony was like, sure, let's do it. So I definitely planned on doing it, and that was the goal. But obviously there's so much variance in poker tournaments that's the fact that you could say you're going to do something like that and then do it is like, definitely, you're very lucky.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
But I definitely studied tournaments a whole heck of a lot more in 2021 leading up to World Series, and put a lot more online MTTs and things like that to prepare, and spent a lot more time in Solverland focusing on tournament work rather than cash work, and devoted a lot of energy to succeeding in tournaments for sure.
You ended up finishing 10th overall. Anthony Zeno, who's been on the show, and when he was leading the way, we were talking with him, and he did declare that he was trying to win Player of the Year. He ended up actually finishing 12th, so you even beat him out there. But obviously an incredible run with regards to the WSOP. Let's take a little step back before we get into all of it. Is that, tell me how you kind of got started in the world of playing poker, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about how you got into kind of the business booming side of Twitch poker. And it sounds so funny, like people are like, oh, did he start just start a page? No, this is the person who kind of started Twitch poker. And it seems silly now, like, oh, of course there's Twitch poker. Well, back then it wasn't so obvious to do. It's almost a decade ago. It wasn't so obvious to have Twitch poker. But how'd you get started playing poker?
Yeah, so I actually was living in Oceanside, California, which is a suburb in San Diego, North County. And I was helping run business development marketing for an esports team called Quantic Gaming at the time. And Quantic had a bunch of StarCraft pros, and obviously there's a few really successful StarCraft poker players. Like the conversion, Elke is probably the best example. Great one. A few others too, but like maybe one of the greatest of all time is actually this Korean guy named Boxer, and I've seen him the last 2 World Series I've been at, which is really cool. In Korea, he's like the baseball, like Derek Jeter, like he's
Right.
super
Right. It's incredible. Like for people who don't know, and we've had Elke on the show and he's talked about it. StarCraft, which is basically, esports video game in Korea, you can not only be a pro, folks, like well into 6 figures, but you are so well known. You're not walking down the street.
Yeah,
it's like Daniel times whatever factor you want to put on it.
Oh, yeah,
you think Daniel's huge here in the US. It's crazy what it is for those people. And obviously for Elke, as he described, it was different because in Korea, obviously it's a very homogeneous society, everyone being Korean. Elke sticks out like a sore thumb, not only being non-Korean, but with his bright blonde hair. Elke was Elke, so it's a different world back then.
Elke is one of my favorite people on the planet. He's also one of the most eccentric people I've ever met. Right. So he's gonna stand out. So we live in this house with a bunch of pro gamers, and they would finish practice, I'd finish work, and for a few months we played poker for like potato chips, literally at night, but a lot of pride. Yeah. And then you got a bunch of pro gamers and 4 professional athletes. You're gonna fight each other a little bit,
right?
And then we'd watch old high stakes poker and Poker After Dark reruns, and we found players we were fans of, and just kind of like we just all played and watched poker after we were done. So that was like my first really foray to poker. While I was working there to transition to the Twitch part of this, there's a huge fighting game event that happens in Vegas every year called Evo. Evo is like the fighting game world championships. The best Street Fighter players show up, some Super Smash Brothers, for multiple genres of it, and all sorts of different titles. And they play. It's their world championships. It's a huge event. One of the most watched events on Twitch. And Twitch, we used to throw these big parties at every event. So Twitch had rented a bar and obviously had a lot of close relationships with execs there from what we were doing because our players were streaming and stuff. And I had one of them pull me aside, and I had mentioned to him briefly, like, hey man, I know poker is not like a traditional video game, but if I'm playing a game on video, a card game on video on my computer, argue with me that it's not a video game, like, why don't we try this? And he brought me up to that was a guy named JT Gleason, and he brought me up to a guy named Justin Wong, who was executive senior vice president of partnerships at the time. And we were like both 10 sheets in the wind wasted. It was hilarious. We had this conversation, like, yeah, this is great. And then a few months later, they decided, hey, why don't we give us a try and see how it goes? And they sent they had no non-traditional video games on the site at this time. And they had said, okay, well, let's set these benchmarks. If we can hit, and the way Twitch was measuring success back then, and what was minutes watched. And they said, okay, if we had this many minutes watched per month, we'll invest a little more into this. And then if we had this many minutes watched per month, we'll invest a little more. If we had this many minutes watched within 90 days, we'll just like bring you on full time, and you can just create Twitch poker as it's like non-endemic vertical. First big non-endemic vertical. And we hit the 90-day minute watch goal in like 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And they were like, okay, let's just do this. And then I went to work for Twitch for a long time as just like the Twitch poker guy, like running around me with stars and everyone trying to get different folks to stream. And that's kind of when you saw in the poker industry a lot of this is not my doing by any means, but you saw a lot of the sponsorship money start to go away from like the traditional I wear a patch guys to like the guys that create a bunch of content, like the Jamie Staples, Jason Somervilles. Because they were driving these sites. Most of these sites measure success from an ambassador and new first-time depositors and new users, and they found that Twitch is driving a lot of these, and a lot more than the guy that was a patch at the casino who everyone already knows what poker is. So then I went from there, and then I built a community development team at Twitch. So we were trying to build like different types of communities for different publishers, and like Activision Blizzard. Focus on like different programs for them. Then I did some other stuff with non-endemic verticals at Twitch too. And so during that whole time, obviously when I became a Twitch poker guy, I had to I wrestled for a long time. I fought a few times, and I know like if you want to earn respect of like a professional athlete or something, like one of the best ways you can do it if you have the opportunity is like get in there with them. So I was really freaking horrible, but I would sit down and I'd play poker with these guys, and I would take the beatings and take the thumping, and obviously much smaller stakes back then, but I would get in there and I'd play, and I'd try to like get to know them that way, and then built a lot of relationships. A lot of guys streamed, and some of them are still doing it and doing great for it. I love to see it.
Yeah. I was at the 2015 GPI awards. The one of the charities I work for, One Step Closer Foundation, won Charitable Initiative of the Year that year. But for you won the kind of innovator, poker innovation of the year with regards to Twitch poker. And obviously now it seems kind of funny to talk about it, but obviously that has translated into all these people being on Twitch and following, and it's really great. Like I have it, and some of the followers that I follow, when it pops up like he's on Twitch, you hope that you're free so you can sit there and just watch, because to me it is, I don't need to. I've been playing for 2 decades, professionally. I don't need to know all the nitty gritties, but what's great is just to watch them and listen to get into their head. And that is, it's like getting a lesson in a lot of respects. And so I love doing that and watching them play. And so it's a lot easier when you're watching somebody do something, specifically a situation, and then talk about it. And that's where I think it's just phenomenal, right? And it's kind of now slowly translated over. People are doing it on YouTube as well, and all this kind of stuff. And, kudos to you for having that foresight.
Yeah, thank you. I think a big part of it too is like at that time when Twitch poker was created, and I think that poker content was like unbelievably stale, and it was almost like watching grass grow. That 2015, 2014 was kind of the time for me when you watch poker, almost everyone was wearing sunglasses with a hoodie, not saying a word, and like as someone that was, when I fell in love with poker, guys like Phil Locke made me fall in love with poker. Like I would watch Poker After Dark and High Stakes Poker, and you'd be wearing like a ski mask or something and like going bananas and just really eccentric and talking a bunch of fun. And Phil Hellmuth blow-ups, like things like that made it fun to watch poker. Right. And this time it just wasn't fun anymore, I don't think, to my opinion at least. And
well, I think we also
people got to figure out how to make it fun.
Right. We had a time or right after Black Friday, right? 2012 to now, all of a sudden you've got this huge group of young players who all they knew was online. That's all they did. And now suddenly it's, can't do it anymore. So some of them, they had to make a choice. They either moved, right? So they went to a country where they were allowed to play, or two, they decided to give it a shot in live poker. And they realized, wow, I give away a lot of live tells. And so they had to hide those. Or two, they weren't very socially adept because they were literally looking at a screen their entire life. And like you said, what you experienced and what you saw is kind of a result of that. And you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, some of it still carries over where people think like wearing a hoodie and sunglasses and being quiet at the table is being a really good player. It's not necessarily the truth. And
it's actually so interesting because if you play these like small field high roller events that are like very niche, I don't think anyone's doing this anymore.
Right.
But
right.
When you go to the World Series and they're like these large fields, not small buy-ins, I don't say, but smaller buy-ins versus those high rollers, it's like there's a lot of people that are.
Well, and I've had this conversation with a lot of the players. Daniel and I have talked about this, and is that it's almost, first of all, the poker market is bifurcated, right? So you've got and maybe even trimodal, not just bimodal, because you've got like, I always look at it as like $3,500 and lower, right? So that's really kind of like the mid-major, 3,500 being the max of a WPT, lower end buy-in. And then you really have like 10,000 and higher, which is what the high rollers are now. Now, why I say tri-modal is you could get to like the 100,000 super high roller buy-ins, which is even another market. But those high roller buy-ins, the 10 to 25 50s, it's not, we're talking about the main event 10,000 or a one-off WPT. We're talking like a week of, like this recent Poker Go, a week of 10K buy-ins. It's very rare for somebody to have that bankroll to be able to do that. And what Daniel and I were talking about is that this was like old school, right? When you went to the World Series and played at the World Series in 1997 and sat down at the main event with only a couple of hundred players, everyone knew each other except maybe 20 businessmen who just decided to throw down their money. And that's what this kind of high roller world now is. In today's world, you have 80 players who show up at Poker Go Studio, and literally, 78 of them, right? Everyone knows each other for what, and so it's not like you've got to put the sunglasses on and hide it. Everyone knows each other. They're all playing, and like you said, they all get it, right? And the reason I say this, like, is just recently in this Poker Go Cup, you final tabled the first three, all $10,000 buy-in events, taking home over $150,000, almost $175,000. And it is a different world, right? I mean, it's just a different world than playing in a $1,500, no limit hold'em event on a Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday morning at the World Series. As we were jokingly saying beforehand, I say to a lot of people when, a lot of people late reg, I say to a lot of people that I work with, or just that I come in contact with if I teach or just talk to, you want to show up on time because you want to take advantage of the fish who are making mistakes, especially early on, and is willing to give you 100 big blinds because they have top pair.
Yes.
You're not going to find that at a Poker Go. There isn't the fish every single one of these guys is a behemoth, whale, tuna, shark, whatever the hell big fish you want to talk about. They're all incredible players, and it's very different.
Yeah, totally. And I think you're right about not late regging in like literally 9 times. I think this World Series, there was one event that was really good to late reg. And it was like only if you were like really good at playing 20 big blinds or less. I think there's 2 events last year that were really good for it. If you're like just so freakishly good at the stacks. And those events were the 300K super high roller bowl, and there was a 50K at the World Series this year. And the only reason they were good is you could late reg almost into the money.
Yeah.
Like, but that's like not a thing in anything else. That's not some weird super high roller thing that has, almost no players. Like,
right.
So there's, I think, maybe 2 spots that I could think of personally that were good, and not for me because I'm a cash guy. I can have 1,000 big blinds in front of me. I'm a happy camper.
That's right.
Maximum pain,
That's right. But yeah, I mean, it's just such a different world when you're playing in these events. 70, 80 of the top players in the world who are all GTO, metagame, et cetera, and really playing, as you're saying, looking at every solver out there. But there is a mix. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like everyone's a robot when they're out there. We've talked to a lot of players who are like, listen, I don't look at the solvers the way these other guys do, but I have such a foundation that's different than these guys that I utilize that and combine the two. And I think that obviously makes a lot of sense as well.
And that's the beautiful thing about poker is we can all look at the same solver.
Exactly.
We can interpret them differently, and what we decide to use. What we decide to use and how we use them can be different based off one's perception. So that's what makes poker so cool.
And ultimately, there is that aspect of luck in this game. And so you can make 100%. The solver says to do this. Now, if over a huge period of time, it'll all level out and balance out. But in that specific moment in time, the solver will say this. And then the 3-outer hits, and doesn't matter.
And then there's literally people right now that are like, when you see hand histories, a couple online guys, Barry Sweets and Linus have been playing a bunch of heads up on GG. Have you seen these hand histories?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, they're playing like a different game. Like,
Yeah.
like they're not playing. Like they're both so much better
Yeah.
than like you'll see a hand. You're like, well, this is just unreal stupid, and you'll plug it in. And you're like, no, I am unreal stupid.
Right.
I have
Right.
no clue what's happening. So it's just
Right.
I don't know. It's just that the game's so it's such a hard, beautiful game to understand.
Right. Right. And that's the thing that, being in this, playing for almost 2 decades, you've seen the ebbs and flows of this game, of super tight to ridiculous. I have an ace in the small blind and I'm going to min 6-bet you the whole way, that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
to small ball, to just call on the flop, pre-flop, and see what the flop brings, to checking the turn every single time. It was a main event where 90% of the hands got checked on the turn, like 90%. I have the stat. It was crazy. One of those things, like, I think we were 100 hands in, and we kind of looked at it and go, I don't think there was a bet on the turn yet, that kind of thing.
That's
So
wild.
yeah,
That's not exploitable.
yeah. I mean, it's crazy. You know what I mean? It's crazy how the world has evolved, obviously, in poker. Before we get to your 2021 WSOP, which was a massive success, not only the 2 bracelets, but the No Limit Player of the Year. I'd be remiss not to ask you about it, and I'd love to, just give you a few moments just to kind of address. I know you've addressed them on some other podcasts as well, and you've had people such as Phil Hellmuth and Phil Nagy supporting you on social media, stating that some of these accusations are not true. But earlier on in 2021, there were some accusations against you, stating that you had done some things wrong in some home games. And then a couple other players also followed up. So I just kind of give you the floor again. I know you've done this on other podcasts, but some of my listeners may not have heard those and may have heard your name in a negative light. And so I just wanted to give you that opportunity to kind of address those kind of things and just state what they are. And people can look it up on social media, because, as I said, early in 2021, you had not necessarily addressed it. You didn't address these people. Now, not only have you addressed it, but also other people are coming out and supporting you as well. So people can make their own decisions and et cetera. So I will leave the floor to you.
That's actually kind of how it worked, but not exactly. So I didn't address it immediately because I didn't know if I was even wanted to play poker anymore after it all happened, to be honest.
Yeah.
And one of my mentors kind of sat down with me and he was like, you love this game and you're so competitive and you really do enjoy it. And like, success is the best revenge. Don't go be mean. Don't go talk smack. Just go win. And like that will drive someone that dislikes you more insane than anything else in the world. Just go succeed.
Right.
And watch them. They're not going to. They're too busy focused on you and not actually doing the things they need to do to succeed. Like that, you got to focus. And I took that whole like success is the best revenge thing very seriously. That's what motivated me to like really start studying tournaments. So I was accused of some stuff. So I think sometime in November I made a bunch of tweets that address everything directly with. Like I was told I stole money from Phil Hellmuth. There was a video from Phil saying I did not steal money from Phil Hellmuth. I was told I got Phil Nagy intoxicated and took advantage of him. There's a text from Phil Nagy saying I did not get him drunk and take advantage of him.
If anything, you said for him to not stop playing, right?
I literally called him and told him to quit the game, and he was like, no. I'm not gonna say his exact words, but he's right. Like, you gotta let an adult, and if you warn someone and they say screw you, like not those words, he didn't say screw you, but if they say I want to do this anyways, then you gotta let them do their thing. Especially when you know they can afford it, they're responsible enough. They're not jeopardizing themselves.
Well, you also warned him. It's not like you didn't say. You said something, and he made his own. He's a grown man. He made his decision.
Exactly.
And this is all stated. We're not talking about this hearsay. This is all put up on social media.
Hearsay.
So again, I'd like people to understand that and let them do their own research if they'd like to.
Then I posted a couple things that I wish I would have done differently. And that's the way I'll phrase it. I wish I would have done a couple things differently, but they're not things that are not very commonly done in every high stakes home game. They're not cheating by any means. Mm-hmm. Then I think Doug and Tonka said I was an asshole. And I said, yes, 7 or 8 years ago when I met them, I was definitely super insecure and a very different person than I am now. And part of that insecurity, when you're like me and you've never played poker before and you're thrusted into poker or something like Twitch poker and have to meet everyone and have to try to feel like you have to be everyone's friend and stuff. And I definitely did not handle some of those situations very well. And I definitely was not the nicest guy to those dudes a few times, and other people too, quite frankly. I mean, quite frank, but it's changed a lot, obviously, over the last 7-8 years. I'm not the same person I was last year or the year before that or the year before that, let alone 7-8 years ago. I try not to hold too much of serious grudges against people for little things like words,
right,
or times like that.
Well, I appreciate you spending that time and addressing those. Again, I'd be remiss not to at least bring that up as a journalist. And so I wanted to make sure that that's come across. And again, to my listeners, if you're not 100% sure, we don't have to spend the whole show on it. That's not what this is about. But I've given you, I think, some information, and Scott has as well. And you can investigate yourself and make your own determinations from there.
I think that tweet longer thing was made in November too. If anyone wanted to really find it, they can scroll through my Twitter and find the big post about everything.
And what's your Twitter, just so people have it?
End game Scott.
End game Scott. Great. When we come back, we're going to talk poker. The stuff that why people are listening, why they want to know about, and to continue our interviews with 2021 WSOP bracelet winners. When we come back, we're going to talk with the 2021 WSOP No-Limit Player of the Year, Scott Ball, when we return here on the Bernard Lee Poker Show.